Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're talking about Pride Month 2026. Because at its core, pride at work is a work issue really about a simple question. Can every person show up, contribute their talents, build a career, and be treated with dignity and respect? Let's dive in. This week marks the beginning of Pride Month, and every year at this time, I find myself thinking about work. Not primarily politics, not the culture wars, not the endless debates that seem to dominate our attention these days. I think about work because work occupies such an important place in our lives. It's where we spend our time, build our careers, provide for our families, pursue our ambitions, develop relationships, and contribute our talents. And at its best, work is simply not just a source of income. It's also a source of dignity, purpose, opportunity, and maybe even belonging. And that's why Pride Month matters in the workplace, and why it's worth taking a few minutes to reflect on what pride at work really means in 2026. Because what we're talking about is something much larger than any single policy or program or single company's initiatives. We're talking about whether or not every person has a fair opportunity to fully participate in working life. We're talking about whether people can show up as themselves, contribute, pursue advancement, and build their careers without the fear of discrimination or exclusion or disrespect or even safety. Those ideas may sound simple, but throughout history, they've not always been available to everyone equally. For LGBTQ+ workers in particular, the workplace has often been a place where people felt pressure to hide important parts of themselves, and where being known for who they are could create professional risk, and where opportunities that others took for granted could be harder to access for them. And it's important to acknowledge how much progress has been made. Compared to 20, 40, or 50 years ago, LGBTQ+ workers today enjoy protections, visibility, and opportunities that previous generations could scarcely imagine. And many organizations have adopted anti-discrimination policies, more inclusive benefits, employee resource groups, and leadership programs, all designed to support diverse employee groups. And legal protections have expanded, representation across the board has increased, and conversations that once happened only in whispers now can take place openly in many workplaces around the country. And those achievements are meaningful, and they were earned through decades of advocacy, leadership, courage, and persistence from countless people who believe that workplaces could be fair and should be more inclusive. But at the same time, Pride Month should also be a moment for honesty. Progress is real, but progress is not the same thing as permanence. And if there's one thing the last few years have taught us, is that social progress does not simply move forward in a straight line forever. Gains that feel settled can suddenly become contested. Policies that seem secure can be challenged. Cultural norms can shift. Political priorities can change. And what brings us here to an uncomfortable reality now that many LGBTQ+ workers are experiencing today. While workplace protections and opportunities are still stronger than they were decades ago, many people do not feel as confident about the future as they did even just 5 years ago. The political and social environment surrounding these issues has become significantly more contentious. Diversity, equity, inclusion programs have come under pressure, and some organizations that once spoke loudly about inclusion have become much quieter. Public debates over gender identity, workplace policies, and civil rights protections have intensified. And for many LGBTQ+ workers, particularly transgender employees, the question is no longer simply whether progress has been achieved. The question has become whether that progress can be maintained, and whether the commitments organizations made when inclusion was broadly celebrated will remain intact when inclusion becomes politically controversial. And I think that question matters regardless of where someone falls on the political spectrum. The workplace should never be a place where people feel compelled to hide who they are in order to succeed. It should never be a place where fear determines who's comfortable contributing, speaking up, pursuing advancement, or building relationships with their colleagues. The workplace should be a place where people are evaluated based on their performance, their character, their contributions, and their potential. That's not a progressive idea or a conservative idea. It's a fundamental workplace principle, and it's the idea that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. So what concerns me is that in periods of social tension, organizations can sometimes retreat into silence. Leaders may convince themselves that avoiding difficult conversations is the safest path forward. They may decide that reducing visibility, lowering support, or stepping away from previously stated commitments is simply a pragmatic business decision. But values are not really tested when they're popular. Values are tested when they become more inconvenient. Leadership is not demonstrated when everyone is simply agreeing with you. Leadership is demonstrated when there's pressure to look away from a problem, and instead you choose to address it directly. That doesn't mean every company needs to be like a highly active political actor. In fact, I'd argue the opposite. Employers should focus on what they can control. They can create respectful workplaces. They can enforce anti-harassment policies consistently. They can ensure that employees do have equal access to opportunity. And they can train their managers to lead diverse teams effectively and always listen to employees when their concerns arise. The goal is to create environments where people feel safe bringing themselves to work, their whole selves if they want to. Those are not political acts. Those are management responsibilities. Those are the things that define whether or not an organization truly values its people. For HR leaders, business leaders, and managers, Pride Month should be an opportunity to ask some important questions. Do employees trust us to treat them fairly? Do people feel safe reporting concerns? Do our policies work in practice or just on paper? And do employees believe that they can advance based on their contributions? Do we create an environment where differences are respected and where every individual has the opportunity to succeed? Those questions matter far more than social media posts, rainbow washing the company logo, legal approved corporate statements, or temporary marketing campaigns because they get to the heart of the employee experience. As we reflect on Pride Month this year, I keep returning to these same ideas. Inclusion is not about granting special treatment. It's about creating fair treatment. It's about ensuring that every person has access to opportunity. It's about recognizing the dignity and worth of every employee, and about understanding that organizations become stronger when talented people are able to contribute fully, rather than spending their energy hiding who they are. And we need to remember that civility, respect, and fairness are not signs of weakness. They're signs of confidence and clear-eyed leadership. We should celebrate the progress that's been made, while also recognizing that this progress requires continued effort. We should have the courage to support workplaces where every person is treated with dignity and respect, and we should remain committed to expanding opportunity rather than restricting it. And we should remember that the true measure of a workplace is not how it treats the people who fit in most easily. The true measure of a workplace is how it treats the people who may feel most vulnerable. Because at the end of the day, work works best when everyone has the opportunity to belong, to contribute, and to succeed. That's it for the show today. A big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. And be sure to subscribe to the HR Happy Hour Network on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.